Hello and welcome back to the Renew You Students YouTube channel. We've been going through our series of A Tale of Two Kings about how there was a king, King Saul, who was disobedient to God even though God placed him in that position, and was then replaced by a new king who had the heart of God. This is David. And now, although King Saul has shown great disobedience throughout his whole time as king, now we are focusing on the time in which David is king and what he will do now that he is the one in charge. Previously, we saw what was going to be the first step as David being the king of whole Israel, in which he was trying to bring the ark to the capital of the kingdom. But he didn't really understand very well that how the ark was supposed to be brought and what that ark really represented, which was, God being among his people. So in this problem in which David didn't really bring the ark in the right way, someone died, and then David had to really rethink at that time how it is that what his position was and what God's position was. And so he ended with great celebration as the ark was being able to be brought in the right way. But now David is thinking about, where are we going to put the ark? Yeah.
And so at this time, up until this point, the entire time that the ark had been among the Israelites, the ark had stayed basically in a tent. It was like a tent that you could, I wouldn't say like a camping tent, but more like a pop-up easy tent type thing that they could take down and take with them wherever they were traveling. Because at first, the Israelites kept traveling. And so when the ark came to David, he was still in a tent. And so in our story today, we start with David laying there, and he is resting because he's no longer in any wars or anything like that. And he's talking to the new prophet that God has raised up. So before we had the prophet Samuel, and now for this and the remainder of our stories with David, it'll be the prophet Nathan. It's a new prophet, and King David's talking to Nathan, and he says, "Here I am living in this beautiful house. It's actually a house, but the ark of God is still in a tent." And so the prophet Nathan replies to King David and says, "Whatever you have in mind to do, go ahead and do it, because God is with you." And so they both go their separate ways. And Nathan goes to sleep that night, and he hears the word of the Lord for David. So God delivers a message to Nathan to give to David. And basically, in a short version of this is, God tells Nathan to go and tell David that that God is the one who brought the Israelites up out of Egypt, that he has been moving to place in a tent as his living space to be among the people. And wherever the Israelites went, God was with them. And so, and then God asks Nathan to remind David that God brought David up from the pasture where he was tending the sheep, and he has been with David wherever he's gone. He has cut off enemies for David. He will make David's name great because he is God. And he will provide a place for Israel and will give them like a house of their own so they won't be disturbed, and that basically they'll have a time of peace for a while. And more so than that, God is going to make David's name great and make his kids and their kids great and establish this house because of the Lord's name. And God also says something really crucial here. He basically says, "David, you're not going to be the one who is going to build a house for me, but one of your sons is going to do that. One of your sons is going to have that honor of building me a place of honor because of the blood that you have shed in all of your wars," basically. And so God is acknowledging that David's trying to do the right thing and honoring God. But God basically tells David, it's not going to be you that builds the house for me, though. I appreciate your sentiment, but it's not going to be you. It'll be one of your sons that does it. And so then Nathan comes back and tells David everything. And David is just in awe of God. And he repeatedly tells the Lord that, you have brought us up to this place. You brought me from the pasture. I am now this king. You are great, Lord. And he just repeatedly tells the Lord about how great he is, which I think is a great response to God basically telling David, no, don't build a house for me.
Yeah, this is an amazing story because we see that we see the intention in David. We see what he has, the true heart that God wants. That he said, oh, really what's important isn't me where I'm going to stay, but where God is going to be able to place his kingdom and how he's going to dwell among us. And so, of course, there was this issue about David having shed blood, David having participated in so many wars, that really God didn't want him to be the one to place what would be this house of the glory of God, about what God was going to do on earth. But because of that, the spirit that David had, that is what really brought this promise, this amazing promise that goes past the life of David into his children and from generations and generations, that sets really David apart. And there's two things here. As one is that we should have that same heart that David had, to be able to serve God and realize, we may have the best intentions, but not always God wants us to go a specific way. And the second thing is that to really trust in God. And, because David could be like, no, I want to build this. But no, God had his own intentions that will go beyond our own lives and beyond the life of David. So those are things to watch out in throughout the stories, because now David is contemplating what to do about God. He has all these wonderful good intentions. He has the right heart of God. But that doesn't mean that David won't experience what is temptations or a desire maybe to do wrong. So now in the next story, we're going to see that David, although he might be very good and have the right heart, he can still make big mistakes.
And so we'll talk about that next time. We'll see ya.
See ya.